Joe.
Mark, take off the jacket.
All right. I don't have a glass to hit. So.
We had a good day at Race Point on Saturday.
You guys ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
Taping.
Very hot.
Okay, thank you everybody for being here. It's a hot evening. We're trying to make the meeting as quick as possible, but it's also important night because we have Mark here with us tonight to spend some time, which we really appreciate. Hello. Busy person and lots of night meetings, I would assume, so we'll try to respect that tonight and keep it tight. Let's just start with roll call. We'll start from my right this time.
Bragg?
Nina Coleman, Park Manager.
Pete Sampu.
Bill Monroe.
Chris Clark, Town Council Liaison.
Bill Carey.
Maureen Puccioni.
And Tom O'Neill. Before we start, I'd just like to take a minute to have a moment of silence. Today's September 11th, which for some of us is one of the most memorable things that's ever happened in our lives. I had a good friend of mine's son killed in the tower, and yeah, it's something none of us will ever forget. So I'd just like to take a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. We're going to act on the minutes first, and then we're going to do the
Recording. Recordings.
Oh, sorry. If anybody's recording or videotaping this meeting, could they please make themselves known to the chair? Seeing nobody, we'll move on. We'll go to the minutes from August. Does anybody have any amendments or questions about the minutes from August? Otherwise, I'll look for a motion to approve.
I wanted to clarify something in there. It's kind of minor, but it might be confusing for somebody that's not familiar with what's going on. If I can find it here. I should have circled it. Oh, okay. Page 2, under Old Business, number 3, kind of in the middle there. Says the sentence that starts, the project is at 90%. So that's a little misleading. Maybe you want to put in there parentheses, conceptual design or something to indicate, that what stage of the project you're talking about as being 90%.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I noticed that too. At the time of the meeting, we were actually just moving towards 90% design, which I'll go over later. But so I would just say projects moving toward 90% design, something like that. That would cover it. So just make a motion to change the...
Or make an amendment to change the
Yeah, motion
minutes
to amend.
Okay, motion to amend to add, I like the idea of adding parentheses, the conceptual design.
Second.
All in favor? And motion?
Aye.
Okay, motion's carried. Thank you. Okay, so we need to vote on the minutes now with the amendment. Anybody else have any comments about the minutes? If not, could I get a motion to approve the minutes from August?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved, minutes carried. Motion carried, minutes approved, thanks. Just two quick things before we get into the heart of the meeting. Conflict of interest training, I mentioned it last time. I did check. I think the only person that needs it is Bill, I believe.
Just gave it to you a few months ago, but...
Did you? Oh, no, if you did, then I need to find it because I couldn't find it, so... Hey, Chris, because I had, the last record I had was you in 21. I had a certificate in 21. You have it, just send it to me separately by email.
I usually have it, but I'll get you one.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Everybody else is
Time
good.
of the year, so you can certainly get one.
Everybody else is good for another year. I have no idea about you, Pete, or Renee King, who is joining us from the RecCom, but she had a RecCom meeting tonight, so she's going to be a little late. I don't have any idea where you are with the Concom, but
Conservation is pretty much a stickler, so they keep me posted.
yes, I'll assume you're okay, and I'll check with Renee, but everyone else is okay. The other thing is I just want to mention that Ann Kennedy has decided to resign from the board. Excuse me, she, as you all know, has a lot of other commitments, including a meeting that happens right before this one. And she's decided it's kind of getting to be too much, and she has missed a number of meetings. And we've been talking about it for a while, and I think she, excuse me, finally decided it was good time for her to move out. And I thanked her really well for her commitment's always been appreciated. As her background, her experience with the town council has always been really helpful, and she brought a different perspective sometimes to some of the things we were talking about, which is you need on a good team. So we'll miss Ann, but she's decided to move, so we'll need to communicate. She's going to send a letter to Cindy to communicate that to the town council selection committee. So I would encourage anyone who's interested in the position to file their application with the town. We as the chairs and participants on the boards don't have any say in who gets appointed to this, so it's really up to the selection committee of the town council. So we'll have to just wait and see what happens with that process. But that's...
And I should add, that would be an at-large position. And the other thing is that she was the town council rep for over, I think, 10 years,
Yeah.
representing us.
Yeah.
And then she continued here. So she's put in probably close to 20 years
Yeah.
coming here regularly.
Yeah, and that's why I said we appreciate her experience, because she had that so much experience. And plus she's on other committees and groups in the town, so she's very well respected, and we'll miss her. Okay, so do we have any correspondence? Can we just check on that quick? And
I do not.
I don't think I do either. Okay. You want to do the staff report real quick, and then we'll get into the...
Yeah, sure. Okay, so staff report, our gatehouse hours, thank you, Pete, are still 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. We're selling our our ORV permits. We're in the fall permits, which are 100 for non-residents, and how much for residents?
50.
50 for residents. And that permit is good until the 15th of January. So we are having a number of fall permit sales. The ORV beach is open to 4.5 miles, as I've emailed everybody. We opened fully on August 26th, but we were pretty far along. We're already to Trail 2 in early August. So I think we had a very successful year with a lot of beach, and we were open the whole year. So yet again, I think our efforts with our HCP permit has been very successful. We never turned anyone away. In fact, we didn't have any issues with tides this year to speak of.
We
so
did not.
We did not. So we didn't turn anyone away. We didn't turn any campers away. And I think that's 2 years in a row. That's really great. We've had quite a bit of staff members leave. This is throughout town, but we do have some staff left over. We're fortunate that we have a few folks that were done with college and are staying through the fall and helping us through our fall projects. So Diamondback terrapins are hatching right now. We have terrapins in the garage if anybody's interested. We have the buckets of terrapin eggs, and they're emerging. So it's been a lot of fun in the morning to come and find those guys. Once they're ready to go, once we can get them feeding consistently, they get put out to all the different agency, schools mostly, and other entities that are raising them, like the town manager who's sitting here. He has one. I believe he really enjoys it.
I do.
Yep. So we're right in the middle of that, and we remind cottage owners when they're traveling down the Marsh Trail. We had 408 terrapin nests times 12.
Wow.
Average
That
number of eggs.
is, yes, average number of eggs, 12. So if you hike on the Marsh Trail, you'll see this lovely little track all over the place, and those are those hatchlings emerging and moving about. So keep a sharp eye out when you're driving or even walking. Marsh Trail, we do have some issues on Marsh Trail, and there was a request to put some restrictive fencing up, and that has been placed. We are looking to the cottage owners to let us know problem areas for our spring Marsh Trail repair. we're pretty aware of a few as well. So everything is going well on that side. And I want to let everybody know we are tracking this storm. We do anticipate pulling the portable toilets off the beach and removing the fencing in anticipation of some big winds out of the north. Finally, what was our assistant natural resource officer, Antonio, has moved to natural resource officer. So he actually took. This is a little confusing. He took Josh's position, but a woman named Anne Marie Lupino actually moved to the full-time Sandy Neck, and Antonio will be at large and at Sandy Neck. So we continue to move our seasonal staff who've been with us for a number of years up the ladder, and it's great to see them doing really well. So Antonio is now not only at Sandy Neck, but will be addressing other natural resource issues such as shellfish, animal control, herring runs, etc. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody had any.
Cleanup coming up, don't we?
That is Donna.
We do. It's going to be this coming Sunday, the 17th. We're looking forward because MBBA is going to be joining us. And so it's from 9 a.m. to noon. All anybody has to do is come to the gatehouse. We're going to meet up in the parking lot. We'll provide gloves and bags and a tally sheet for the coast sweep. So we're looking for a pretty big crowd this year. And after the potential hurricane, we may need some help on Sunday. So we're looking forward to it. I had a lot of phone calls. A lot of people want to come on out. So that'd be great. All of you guys are welcome.
That number, 408 terrapin nests, how does that compare to last year?
It's a few over the record. I think it was 105, and we got to 108.
105, right. Yep.
So
Just a little bit over the record.
we're doing a lot. We are going to be head starting less. We're still going to maintain the same amount of organizations because everybody's very vested. We're just going to give them less turtles because it seems like the population is doing really, really well.
Sounds like it, yeah.
And could you please mention as to the spreading of terrapins out of Barnstable Harbor into other coastal environments?
Absolutely, yeah. So we definitely see what's known as disbursement. You know, we had that nest up by the cottage colony, which was a surprise. We're seeing them crossing 6A. Unfortunately, we had a few fatalities of plovers crossing. Plovers, not plovers, sorry. Diamondback terrapins crossing 6A. So we're hoping that they're moving out and mixing their genes with other populations. If you really isolate a population too much, that's when they start getting in trouble. So I think we're doing really well, but it's a lot of animals, and so we don't want to artificially mess with the system too much.
So they're actually nesting south of Route 6A?
I believe they cross at Bridge
No
Street
kidding.
and go up into that marsh because that's where I see the
Yeah.
females crossing.
Okay. Wow.
Yep.
I always think of them as digging nests into the sand, like sand dunes, but they wouldn't be if they're where you're describing.
Yeah, and they're on the south edge of the marsh as well.
Yeah,
On some of those dead-end streets. There's terrapins up in there as well.
yeah.
Pete has turtles as well. Right, you have turtles.
Yes, I have a turtle, and on the 6A crossing, I moved 2 or 3 turtles out of the middle of the road, stopping traffic. I didn't get yelled at too badly.
I have a question as far as if cottage owners encounter them in the marsh trail, what would be the protocol? Do you want them to move them into the marsh?
The hatchlings?
Yes.
So hatchlings are the size of a quarter. Yes, it would be appropriate to move them in the direction they're going, and then just into some cover is the best. Obviously, when there's no cover, then they're more at risk for getting too hot or being predated. So, yes, please.
Okay, just a thank you to the staff. I mean, every summer is always a challenge. It's a lot of uncertainty about weather and other things, but as usual, thanks from the board for the Sandy Neck staff doing a usual excellent job getting through the summer and managing the crowds and the all the constituents on the beach. So we applaud your success and thank you for that. Okay, so we're going to get into the heart of the meeting, and I'm just going to do hopefully about a 5-minute summary of the project. Just had an update with the project team today, just in time, and so I've got a relatively good feel, I think, for where we are with things, and I'm just going to go through that, and then, as you all know, I sent Mark some questions ahead of time, and we'll then have a chance just to have a discussion with Mark around some of those questions, which largely revolve around, how can the board, how does the town see this as a project amongst all the probably hundreds of projects that the town's managing, and what can we do as a board to help the project be more effective, or us be more effective in supporting the project. Just sort of a discussion around that after we. So let me just give you the quick. Just going to go through kind of the major components. So in terms of design. The team is moving towards final design. They expect to have 90% design by end of December. I said the wrong thing? Possible. End of December, they should have the 90% completion, and 100% will probably be done sometime around May of next year. Obviously, some of that's dependent on the issues that could be raised in the permitting process, and there already are a few that are being addressed, so that could affect timing to some extent, but right now that's the current schedule. Permitting, which is a really key issue because we need a lot of them. The MEPA permit, which is the EPA permit in Massachusetts, was filed in July. And right now, the feeling of the whole group is that we will most likely not need to provide additional information other than what we've already provided to them. They feel confident that what we've submitted is likely to be accepted. There are two big issues which we talked about in the past. One is the amount of permeable space. This isn't going to be my night, is it? You tell me. Oh, yeah. Okay. Bill, can you?
Not my fire department.
Holy crap. Okay. The two big issues are the amount of permeable space, and this relates to mainly around the issues of the parking lot, trying to maintain the number of parking spaces as much as possible without creating an additional impermeable ground. The team feels pretty confident. They think that they can solve that problem by using materials that could be, still allow water to flow through them. Could be blocks, could be other kinds of materials. So they feel confident they can come up with a solution there. And the other is, I guess, generally the spadefoot toad habitat issue, which I guess they're looking for kind of a one-to-one replacement of whatever we take, and in terms of moving the parking lot back. And again, I think the team feels comfortable that with some redesign work, particularly on the retention basin, I think it is, and things like that they can actually meet that need, and therefore remove the major issues that the EPA would have with respect to the permitting. So they're responding to MEPA this week on those issues and expect a response, hopefully favorable, within 3 weeks. So that's really positive. Mass Historical, a little bit more of a potential challenge because they're requesting an archaeological survey of the disturbed area. So we are just in the process of getting some estimates because that's going to cost something. I know Amber's already on that, seeking out some companies that could do that work, and hopefully we can get that done within the project timeframe without it slowing us down but it could slow us down a month or two, potentially. Then you got Old Kings Highway. Again, they're going this week before OKH. I think really there it's a letter of support they're looking for, a letter of kind of an okay that this is all right. Mainly the issue, I think, with Old Kings is there's apparently some potential issue with moving this rock that's somewhat ornamental near the gatehouse. So that when they move the gatehouse, they're going to have to move the rock, and that's, has some significance. So they're just going to review that with them. They don't anticipate a big issue because it's just moving it from A to B. Continuing with the permitting, National Heritage. They need a we need a conservation management permit and wildlife management permit, I guess, from them. And they hope to have that permit completed by February of '24. Again, not anticipating any major roadblocks, but it's obviously an important one to secure. And then last but certainly not least is Concom, which will, and I'm not sure exactly what the sequence will be, but probably won't go before Concom until we have all the permits. I think that's the way it's going to work. So probably, I think they're anticipating probably February for Concom review.
So we as Sandy Neck Board does not need to have all the other permits in hand to come in front of Concom. You can bring, I'm almost positive, we can check over the front desk, you just need your plan. We do not pass or hold things up based upon other permitting.
Okay. Okay, but I think it was actually probably would be Woods Hole going before Concom, wouldn't it, or not the board?
Generally, conservation and the MISA permit, which is the endangered species permit, go hand in hand. So we wouldn't want to go into conservation until we had worked out the mitigation
Right.
piece. So that's kind of the last step
Right.
of the puzzle.
Right. So we're anticipating that would be February, depending on the timing of the archaeological survey and, the MISA permit and that kind of stuff. But at least that's the current plan. So hopefully by mid-March, permitting would be finalized. In terms of funding, which is obviously pretty important, there are kind of two aspects to that right at the moment. One is the CZM grant. Obviously, they've been funding the work to date and are part of the project team, and I think very supportive of the project, which is great. And we need another $125,000, I think, roughly, to complete the design work. We are currently seeking $92,000, I think it is, from CZM, and the rest would be covered by the town or by the enterprise account. I'm not sure how it would be done, but they also have potentially $2 million available for project funding, which is something else we could apply for, as I understand it. So the other thing that's happened, which is very interesting, is the NOAA is putting forth projects, funding for coastal resiliency projects. And the state, rather than us doing this individually, the state has taken on the role of applying for a number of coastal resiliency projects, totaling around $75 million for various projects around the state. My understanding is they have us in there for $5 million for the Sandy Neck project. So that's another opportunity for us to gain funding and hopefully minimize the sort of debt service we would need to carry in Barnstable. It doesn't require a match, as I understand it, but we would definitely need to have, to get it, we would definitely need to have town commitment to cover the expenses that went above that, whatever amount they gave us. So that's, something that would have to be discussed as we get further down the road. It makes it a little challenging right now to estimate the debt service that would result from the project, but we can do some pro formas on that, and the town, Nina, her team can do that. So, we're still kind of at around that $5 million number for the project. It's a big project. How much was the bathhouse project?
Oh my gosh. I think it was $1 million.
Yeah, this is the biggest project I think that's probably ever happened at Sandy Neck, and it's certainly a big project for the town at that sort of cost. So, we're trying to do the best we can to bring in a good solution and then also look at all the funding options as much as possible through the project team. Timing-wise then, I think we're thinking about some sort of a public meeting, possibly in April, May timeframe, which would be, to just go through the final design, make sure there's nothing major that we've missed in terms of some of the detail. With potentially construction, which could begin on phase one, of construction, maybe as early as winter 24, 25, sometime in that time frame. And this is a good lead into our discussion because obviously all of that is dependent on the process for getting this project through the town approval process, which is, some combination of, as I would understand it, the town council, the town manager's team. We also realize that with this project, we're in the midst of competing with lots of other projects in the town. So we're looking at this a little blinkered from our perspective, but we also understand there's lots of other things going on that create, priority for the town and cost potential for the town. So but we just wanted to try to kind of open the discussion. Thank you very much, Mark, for coming. We really appreciate it. And just try to get a little bit of your insight into how you see this project in the context of the town's priorities. And then again, what can we as a board do to try to improve the likelihood this will happen, and give the project team in terms of what they're working on, that kind of stuff. So,
Sure. Well, thank you all. Thank you for the time you spend. Certainly, Sandy Neck is one of our most beautiful and unique assets, and protecting it, managing it, using it is critical for us. So, when you ask how we view the project, well, it's the number one priority in our CIP for Sandy Neck. I think we're in a little bit different point than we were. You referenced that we've been talking for 8 years, but I think there was a real question about the type of approach we should take to combating the erosion challenges that we see in these dynamic environments. I see it's much more unified at this point that, yes, this is a dynamic environment, and it's going to change, and so we're going to need adaptive sorts of approaches, to manage this asset. And, with the council vote, I don't speak for the council. I certainly am the gatekeeper to what goes into this book and proceeds either in the regular capital improvement program or as a supplemental. This is advanced in 24 to design permit. You're working with the state to secure funds. I mean, what we do and what anybody does is all about communication, step by step through the process. So you should never be questioning where are we or what's next. Ask me to come in, or I'll have appropriate staff here to talk with you. The capital process is a combination of options. It's a great thing about town manager, town council form of government. We can either do it annually, which you kind of see with the operating budget and the capital budgets, but we can also do supplemental. So when you have a complex project like this, and having managed, I started as an engineering project manager a long time ago. So, this is wonderful in the sense from a management standpoint that we know there's still unknowns as we proceed. Whether it's a design issue, a funding issue, an environmental regulatory change, any regulatory change. So we can adapt. If it can't fit the timeline of the CIP, we would want to watch that, Nina, as it evolves, and we would want to make decisions, because what we wouldn't want you to do is miss a grant deadline when we have funding available. The nice thing about our form of government is we can do that. We can bring in supplemental. Now, how does that happen? It comes to me and is justified. I look for my departments that are involved to say, yes, this needs to be done. To complement that, we need to have a financial plan. And maybe that's one of the major ways that this board can help us advance the project. And I'll come back to that in a second. So I look for Mark Milne. I look for, Derek and supporting staff. I look for Dan Santos to all say to me, all my directors, here's the next step. Here's what we need to do. I always ask Derek, is the Sandy Neck Board in support of how we're moving forward on whatever issue it might be? And the answer is always whatever it is. Yes, they've seen it. They haven't yet. Whatever it is. It's a back and forth communication. So I think you've got a complex project to permit, design, construct. I think you've got an enterprise fund where the most direct way to proceed with this is a combination of reserves from the enterprise, fees from the enterprise to generate revenue, and grants or other outside agencies to fund this. If that's your equation, then really your challenge is to look at how it impacts rates over time, over phases, and to determine whether that's something that you believe is appropriate to proceed with. If it isn't, and you're going to ask for general funds, that's a very different discussion. Because we have $250,000 worth of capital projects pending in the general fund. So, and that's not wastewater. So you throw that in and, you know, we have a significant amount. Now, that's not all in 1 year. That's in a 5-year look at what we need to do as a community. So, and we're doing $50 to $100 million a year in capital. So, but if you're going to ask for general funds to do this, we need to start that dialogue now, because that's not the approach that's typically the initial one with an enterprise fund. That doesn't mean that it can't end there, but then you're in competition
Right.
with roads and bridges, buildings and grounds and schools and everything else. In this role, in this issue under an enterprise fund with fees, it's really what's an acceptable fee structure. So communicate. We're always available. Don't ever feel like anybody's too busy to not be here and help you. You're the ones I'm more concerned about. Don't worry about us. You're volunteering. We want to be here for you. So what can the board do? The board can help to guide the design, can help to continue the level of service and customer service, can help to look at rate increases and how you feel they might impact your users. Use your liaisons. Councilor Clark and Councilor Starr are critical to bring back the message to the council. I meet with staff every Tuesday and Thursday morning. I meet with council leadership every Monday morning, unless it's a Monday holiday, and then we bump it to Tuesday. That isn't a closed meeting, though. Some people think it is for some reason. That's whoever the president and the vice president are. Meet with the manager so they can tell me what the agendas are. I can ask them, can we advance workshops? Can we advance appropriation orders? Are we the major items we talk about? Many times, any counselor sits in that meeting beyond just leadership. So, if you want to say something, use Councilor Starr and Councilor Clark to get me or the president, the council president, whatever it is you're asking. Operational stuff, my staff knows the role that Andy, Mark, and I play. Sometimes you throw in legal. We're kind of like the four sitting there looking at everything that's coming in and trying to organize it in a way so it can proceed. So that's how I see this advancing. I see it as a really complicated project. I think that if we can get it in a CIP, I mean, you're already listed and got approved for the design, and you're listed for $4.3 million next fiscal year. There's a lot of detail to work out between now and January. We just heard about permitting that's going to go into the spring. So my read on this is if you're not looking for the 26 CIP cycle, then we're talking a supplemental. Okay. That option's there. There's no reason why we can't be having that discussion. Okay? My experience has been you don't try to force fit a project this complicated onto a kind of like a static sort of budget process.
Yeah.
And that's why the supplemental opportunity is so important to us, because we have to adapt. The world changes. This project will change. It'll change technically, it'll change regulatorily, it'll change financially. So we'll need to adapt it, and I think it'll advance. I think a real strategy to secure these funds is critical. I mean, in what I've read, there's 3 different major potential sources. I don't know if they can stack, or if you get one, you don't get the others. I should know that, as we advance to the big number here, because if you can only get one, we got to strategize on which one's the best to pursue and what's its timeline. And each grant at each level has a timeline, and it comes with conditions. Government always puts conditions on everything. So we need to know that. And, but for us, it's a front burner project. It's the Sandy Neck #1, and I expect to see it advance. I think will advance on its own timeline, though, because it's complicated.
Yeah, and plus the construction kind of has to happen pretty much during the off-season, so
Yeah.
that's another factor.
Yeah, I just think
timing-wise.
it's a complicated
Yeah.
project, and obviously, the more outside funding that is appropriate for us to take, you'll be in a better seat from an enterprise fund standpoint to manage rates and to minimize use of reserves. And but we do this in 8 other enterprise funds, so we're used to this exercise when we're trying to advance a project. So.
As you probably know, last year we did make some pretty big moves around the fee structures to mainly keep us competitive with the market, but also to recognize the utilization of the beach and who's utilizing it. And so we have, a lot of the thought behind that was to start to build some funds for, to back the project. Obviously, not going to be able to back the entire project with that, but at least provide some support to the ability to back the project. But it does highlight, I think what you're saying is really it highlights the importance of these grants, because other than that, we are in the pot with the rest of the $250 million of projects in the town that are competing for capital. So.
Well, but unless you can, between reserves and rates, you can, generate the revenue to offset the debt service to proceed with the project. So that's really what, with Mark Milne, and I don't know, who does your modeling? You guys or a consultant?
Historically, it's been Mark.
Yeah, Mark Milne, okay. So Mark can start running those numbers. He already has. I've seen you've got some debt service coming paid off in the relatively near future, which, that payment can go toward another capital project. So therefore, it's like neutral to rates. So I guess it's time, now that we're getting closer to a real number, it's time to start running that and coming up with the multiple strategies that we need. You've got a consultant doing your design permit, so really it's a financial structure now.
Right.
And then informing the council, because this is going to be a major request. And making sure, but I assume they approved your design money, and it was well explained at that time, so I'm assuming that, well, I don't know if we'll ever do, how many new faces we may have, Chris, coming up. So I think what I'll do is make sure that.
At least 3.
At least some, yeah. And so make sure that we get a chance to refresh everybody's memory on what we've already begun doing here. So, but I'm key in this. Whoever the president of the council is key to advance things, and your project team are key. We all kind of play different roles, and we all have to be in the know. And if you have any pending questions, ask me. If I can't answer it, I'll have the right person to answer it, okay?
I think the interesting question to get your perspective is that obviously Mark highlights some of the benefits of the town council arrangement, but the downside of it is you have whatever it is, 13, 15 members all who have their own little pet projects, areas of concern that they're responsible for, and Sandy Neck may or may not be high on their list for that reason, understandably. And I think one of the things we need to figure out, we won't do that tonight in real time, but is when do we start to really bring this project? What's the sequence we should use in bringing this project to the town council?
I'll write something. I know it was in the question, but you're still early.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unknowns still.
Yeah.
So as we tighten up those, that's why I think the supplemental approach to secure the greatest grant opportunities may be the right path here. On the other hand, it may just fall correctly, and you'll be able to do it to coincide with the CIP, the regular annual CIP. So we'll watch that. And as soon as we could start running numbers on 4.3 million. And you run the worst scenario, which is you don't get any grant money, and you see what the impacts are. And then you begin to, as you secure other potential funding sources, whether it's reserves, relief from other debt that you've paid off, or an outside funding source, then you begin to rework the model. And we'll keep running those scenarios, and ultimately it'll come before the board, and the board will have to, our process has been that the board says yes, we, or no, we don't, and we would look for that.
Yeah, I think the board has been very supportive of the project.
Well, I don't mean the
right
project,
through,
I
so,
mean
yeah.
the fees.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, and then if you're going to need general fund money, that's a different ask and process.
Right.
That's all. So, but, we may get, I don't know what that outcome will be. We'll have to see how the numbers shake out.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I guess what I'm reading between the lines there, just to finish off on the town council, I'm assuming if we have 90% design by December, we start to get the permitting under control by sort of February-ish, that maybe sometime in that March timeframe for the town council, or is that what I'm hearing, or?
Yeah, let's take a look at it as it
Later.
evolves.
Need to stay away from the spring if possible during budget season. Is that true or not?
Let's see, let's just see how it advances.
Yeah. Okay.
We're a ways away from.
So there's no urgency if,
Funding.
yeah, exactly.
Like right now, the grant that's out, that we're waiting to hear back for is for the final part of the design and permitting.
Yeah.
So we're still a ways away from deciding.
Right. So sometime next year, towards the end of the spring maybe, or something like that would be maybe appropriate.
Again, it's a matter of, there's 2 meetings a month. When we're ready, it comes in through myself, Andy, Mark Milne, and typically legal. Comes up through from the project team. We review it. Be more than happy to come in and talk with you then. As each major milestone, I'll come in. And you won't be surprised by where we're going or what we're going to ask next, or I'll try to share the best I can anticipate what an outcome might be. Okay?
Are there any, you mentioned legal, are there any aspects of this that we should have reviewed with legal?
Oh, every aspect of it, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, everything from existing conditions that exist because you've used various funding sources all the way through, and then when you go try to do something or permit it or change it, many times you have to go back and find that original grant and what its conditions were, and are they in sync with what you're trying to do now? And sometimes people don't do that. So when you're ready to build, all of a sudden the state says, "Wait a minute, you can't do it that way. We gave you a grant in 1969 for $8,500, and you've got conditions on this." So yes, absolutely, right from the get-go, you want legal involved. Yep, and that's a real scenario. That happens.
But not one that we want to repeat.
You don't want to repeat that. So, yeah, absolutely. But, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
That'll be my expectation. It won't get beyond me until I've had the right people review it and answer
Right.
the questions. Okay?
Right. Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
We have had CZM with us almost from the get-go, right from the very
Yeah.
beginning. I have authored NOAA grants for educational purposes. Hearing your understanding of potential NOAA funds for the state of Massachusetts, on which Sandy Neck has been identified, to me anyways, and maybe to others on our board, is a potential new source of money. I was hoping there could be, at some level, federal interest in this, because truly, from an environmental resilience of our coastal lands subject to sea level rise, this is a great case study. It's a good investment to share with the rest of America, the rest of our coastline. So if the state sees that in the greater picture with the NOAA section of money they're getting from the feds, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. That's great news, Tom.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of this is always about timing, as Mark said
Yeah,
earlier.
exactly.
8 years ago, yeah, but it wasn't the right time. Things just weren't in alignment, and sometimes you just have to wait for that alignment to get the right set of circumstances to move forward.
So something about striking in hot irons?
Yeah, there you go.
Right, yeah, there we go.
So,
Well, I will work with Derek and Nina to firm up funding opportunities, and we pursue
Cool.
all and any and all different levels. So we'll absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then we'll report back to you. And we'll just keep you informed as we advance this, okay?
Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
So if I understand you correctly, and knowing that the project, I guess one of the keys here is we really have to figure out what this is going to cost us. We're at that point where we desperately need that. So we were talking 4 million, and today you mentioned, maybe 5 million. So we don't know that number yet. So it makes it very difficult to approach anybody. For grants, we probably have people here internally within the town that can search grant money to find out if that's available. But let's say it's $5 million. Let's say with the current finances that we have, we can only cover a couple $100,000 a year in debt service. Then we're going to need an awful lot of money coming from other sources, either from grants or funding by borrowing the funds. And is that how this would potentially come together, is to figure out?
Cash will cover quite a bit of debt, depending on the interest rate. But it's,
I'm also thinking of that cost that we have,
Yeah.
that we have to maintain.
that's an
the
operating,
renourishment
yeah, that's an
every
operating
year,
expense.
$150,000, $160,000
Yeah,
a
you're going to
year.
put it all in a model. On the operating side, 3 major categories, and then on the capital and debt service, 1 major category. If you're not taking from reserves, and then you're going to simply divide by the various number of users, and you're going to come up with what the per unit costs. And gets more complicated because you've got multiple types of users with multiple fees, but that's what Mark Milne will do for us, and we'll be able to run those scenarios. And maybe you should schedule us sometime before the end of the calendar year to come in and have that discussion with the board, and we'll see where we're at. The equation changes if you're going to ask for general funds. That's all I can tell you.
I think that's where we're going. I can't
Significant.
believe we've got grant money out there that they would give us millions of dollars.
Talked about a potential $5 million grant. So want let it work the process.
I mean,
Change your
Little bit
timeline,
early
so
to second guess yourself.
control, but
trying to secure a grant, you're subject to the
Right.
granting agency's timeline, that's
Right.
all. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we're going to try to, the team is looking at all the grant options, obviously be working with the town as well on that. Yeah, you can pro forma some of it. Obviously, if we can't get any grants, then you have to compete for capital or bond, have a bond or whatever, and you have a massive debt service. But, let's see what happens. We have a couple of pretty good options right now that are out there. There's probably more, I don't know, as time develops.
Let's meet quarterly as this advances, and then tighten it up as we get closer to action, okay? And that way, there's plenty between regulatory, between permitting, technical and regulatory and financing, a 15, 20-minute update quarterly. And and then if something else happens and you have a big unknown,
We'll let you know.
we'll be here, okay? All right.
One other concern. Should we be consensus building with town council at this stage, or is it too early? Because they'll want
You know
real
what your
figures.
ask is yet.
They want real figures to know, right? Okay.
What I would like to do, the approach I would like to have is a workshop with town council when we get to know what the project is, that you all, along with myself and staff, are there to explain the project. Workshops are nice because it's nothing up for vote. It's a dialogue back and forth.
Yeah.
And then we proceed to a vote, so you've had the time to really explain it. That's when you get into the public hearing side of it. And this is this is a unique, complicated project, and I think it'll merit that sort of approach. But you got to be at the right point with it.
Yeah,
Okay, you can't say it's a $4 million project and then say it's a $5 million.
yeah,
Right.
No,
exactly.
we got to be a lot further along in tightening that up before we can have that sort of a dialogue. Yeah.
I used the analogy before because I'm not a public, worked in a public arena, but in a private company, thinking of a Mark as a CEO and a town council as a board of directors, using that kind of model, my view was always, you never go to the board until you've got
Right.
the CEO and his team committed, and you've got the final product that you can present, because you're just wasting their time otherwise, I think. So I think that's probably going to be next year sometime, assuming
Where are we?
When we know
September?
more.
So before the close of the year, let's come back.
We'll do an
here and
update,
a
right.
project status update, and then we'll do it again in March, and then we'll see where we're at relevant to this CIP or a supplemental, okay?
Hopefully at that time we'll be ready for Mark to run his numbers.
Absolutely,
Good.
yeah.
But not bother with it now because our numbers aren't.
Yeah, we don't have,
Right, we gotta tighten it up.
he's
gotta
got to
tighten
have
it up.
real numbers.
And the numbers are moving. I mean, things like sand costs are moving around a lot.
And that's,
So,
we don't even have the 90% conceptual yet.
Right.
Right. Any other questions before we let Mark go home? I'll just introduce Renee King down there, who's
How are you?
joined us. She's the chair of the RecCom and is joining us as a RecCom member for the Sandy Neck Board.
Welcome, thanks for coming
Glad
on
to
board.
finally get here.
Mark, thanks very much. By the way, the DPW, my impression of the guy, I know, what's the gentleman's name who came to the public meetings, the younger guy, engineer from DPW. Amber, a man.
Dan Santos.
Not Dan, no, it was, anyway, the DPW people have been great. Amber's been phenomenal in the presentations and as a part of the team, and so really getting good, maybe, I'm sorry, I never, yeah.
Griffin
To our-
Bowden,
to our
yeah,
open
town
meeting.
engineer.
Yeah.
It was recommended.
Yeah, and Dan has been there as well, so.
All right, we'll be
Okay,
back.
thanks so much, appreciate it.
Of course, of course, thank you.
Thank you.
For what
Thanks
you
for
all
bringing
do.
in all this cool air, too.
Yeah. Sorry about the air conditioning.
You came through.
Is that in the capital projects?
No, that's operational.
They yelled.
The HVAC replacement is capital. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mark, appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, good. That was really useful. It filled in a lot of questions. I think it just highlights the transition a little bit away from project design and engineering to this financial piece, which is so critical. I mean, we talked about it a little bit today. Trying to get that financial element of this nailed down, which is complex. So we'll pay more attention to that. We'll do these quarterly updates with Mark and whoever from his team we need. We'll figure that out as we go along. All right, back to the agenda. I think I just wanted to ask Bill if there was anything going on in terms of public outreach that you wanted to talk about today.
Just that project that the scouts have been
Yep.
working on, the bench number 7 got in the ground. They picked a great spot, I thought, out by Trail 5 and the intersection of the horse trail. So if someone's doing some long-range hiking and making that corner, and there's a nice convenient place to rest, and it's a beautiful spot. So there are now 8, including one bench from the previous project, that are all anywhere between Trail 1 and Trail 5. Nice, strong, long-lasting benches that have been put in by Scout projects, and we're going to get those tagged. We're going to put some signs on all of those and indicate that they were a local Eagle Scout Service project.
Great, excellent. Thanks. We love those projects, so keep them coming.
There's a couple of kids that are looking now for new projects. You know, they're not quite to the point in having identified whether they're interested in Sandy Neck or something else.
Yeah.
We're talking with a bunch of kids that are coming up the pipeline, so probably more to come.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Earlier, you were going to ask Chris a question regarding the town council and the project, and I don't think you got to actually ask her. But the reason why I'm bringing it up again, and I understand what he's saying about, making sure that we have all our ducks in a row before you go to the town council. But I also think it's important that we have some feedback from the individual town councilors, because as you mentioned, they all have various, little areas that they're in charge of and what are their different concerns. Because if we don't know what their individual concerns are or where they are on the project, all right, then I think it makes it hard for us to make sure that our ducks are in a row in that area.
Yeah.
And you were going to ask Chris a question earlier?
Well, I don't know how it works in a town. I can only tell you how it would work in a company. I mean, normally the CEO of a company like Mark would be circulating with the board, the town council, and his team would be doing some of that groundwork as a part of the normal process of town operation. I mean, we did try this last time. Years ago, we had Pete for his sins. Going around to each of the town councilors and explaining the project. It's a lot of work. I mean, I'd be interested in your perspective, Chris.
And thank you, Michelle, for that. I would say this being the middle of September, there's a vote on November 7th where all the councilors, all 13 councilors are up for re-election. So although some councilors do not have a challenger, anyone who expects to run for town council has to have nomination papers signed and approved by this coming Friday, or have them in by this Friday. They have to be approved to make sure they're legitimate voters and residents of Barnstable. So my point in saying that is that you could be educating a council that may not be sitting. So it's only a month and a half away before you'll codify who will be the 13 councilors for the town of Barnstable. And it's after that I would expect that maybe there'll be more information from staff and council that will be in place to vote.
Yeah, I think we have to take a lead mainly from Mark on this, would be my view, to see when that timing is right, when he's comfortable, the financials are clear, the project's clear, what's that right time to take it broader, with the entire town council. I don't think it'll be until sometime, I would think, next year, maybe in the spring. We'll need to take Mark's direction on that.
He was suggesting a workshop,
Yeah.
which I think is excellent. I do think that the sitting town councilors are fairly educated on it. We had multiple opportunities for them to go to the public outreach. There's a lot of material online. There's an amazing storyboard that you guys should check out. It's really, really good, and it's on the website. But I think, we do have this concern about new people that aren't familiar with the project, that haven't had a chance to weigh in because we don't know their issues, right? We know that people town councilors have had a chance to give us their issues at this point, or their concerns, but now we're going to have a new group of people. And so I would agree that we need to make sure that we have a workshop, as the town manager suggested, to hear what they have to say before we're at the end of design, at 100% design.
How
think that's an
just
excellent point.
refresh my memory, how frequently do the town councilors change? Is it 2 years or 3 years?
It's a 4-year term.
4-year,
but
okay.
Every 10 years for example, after the 2020 census, the data is collected, and no one councilor can have more or less than 5%, if I have this correct, more or less than 5% vote of the amount of voters in that precinct than any other precinct. So what happens is the town clerk works with staff and state to wiggle the lines of the precincts
Right.
to adjust. For example, the big residential housing complex behind BJ's just put a ton of voters or potential voters in precinct 1, which would be Councilor Starr's precinct. So that made his representation more dense, which means geographically it has to shrink so that the others can adjust.
The numbers align, yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
So whenever there's new dense development, it changes the fairness in the representation.
But in theory, if the council, let's say hypothetically, changed completely in November, we would have at least a 4-year period where it wouldn't change?
No, because it's staggered.
Oh, it is staggered, okay.
Yes, so
Okay.
the even number councilors will have an additional 2 years of service before they have to run again after this year. I'm an odd number council, precinct 11. So once I get elected, should I get elected, I'll have a full 4-year term.
Okay.
But the even number counselors from 2, 4, 6, 8, those precincts will have 2 years before they have to run again. But every 10 years, everyone has to
Right.
run.
So I guess just to respond to Maureen's question, I guess we would ask you to let us know if you see any opportunities or issues developing with the town council that we can intervene in or support you on. We'll take your guidance on that. I know Gordon is on other committees. I know he doesn't often come to this meeting, but
Planning board, I think.
you can let him know, yeah.
Sure.
And,
And what I suggest, perhaps, that this would give lean more on staff than it does the rest of the committee members. But of course, I encourage you to work together. But once there are new counselors, you might want to extend an invitation to visit Sandy Neck and take a ride on, and explain some of the issues and what's going on one by one, or make their availability, or make yourself available for them to have a tour and to bring them up to grade or up to speed on this new project, because the counselors from I believe it's 12. Katuitt, Councilor Rapp Grassetti is term limited, so she's not running again. So there will be absolutely a new counselor there, as is the counselor, and I forgot the number, Jen Cullen.
Jen Cullen.
I don't know
What number it is. And I heard that
12.
Counselor Nick Atzlis has decided not to run again. There is a candidate, former deputy chief Craig Tamish is running for that position. So he's familiar with the town, but not necessarily this project. And anyone else who might have a challenger who wins.
okay, that's a good suggestion.
I have a question for you, Chris.
Sure.
Do you pick the board that as town councilor, do you pick the board that you serve on?
But that's a good question. I think the assignments are made by the leadership. So at this time, it's Council President Levesque and Council Vice President Jen Cullum. But every year, we elect new president and vice president. So it can change. It will change once we have a new election. Then we pick every year we pick new leaders, even if we pick the same leader. So that determines the council leadership, and they make the liaison assignments. But I think what has been the tradition, and I'm satisfied and happy that our council leadership sees value that Gordon Starr from Precinct, and it's been the tradition that the councilors from Precinct 1 and 11 are both liaisons to the Old Kings, to not only Old Kings Highway, but also to Sandy Neck Board, because it spans both precincts.
Okay. Thanks.
Tom.
Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
Maureen as well. I've been involved often at a personal level with individual counselors over the last 6 or more years, trying to serve as an educator to individuals who might not have known as much about this project. And my sense over that time is that our town council is much more aware and in support today than it was 6 years ago.
Just hope it stays that way after November.
Yes. Well, that's
that's the risk that Chris is pointing out. Yeah.
important.
Okay, I think we had a discussion on fees planned. Do you want to get into that right now?
So every year in September, we do put this topic on the agenda. We have it on the agenda for this meeting and then the October meeting, so we're set up for fee hearings for the calendar year. Historically, we do an every other year fee increase, and so I would like to stick with that. That's staff's recommendation. We did pretty substantial increases last year. And when we looked at this project, and we looked at debt service, of course, the figures were different then, that pushed us in the direction of those fee increases so that we could cover, we could stockpile some surplus and then cover a certain amount of debt service. So that evaluation, which I now need to redo with Mark Milne, has us raising fees for, like we already did, and then again, not this year, but next year, and it would again be potentially a jump. So I would like to stick with that. You know, I think everything is working well. I think that we have gotten feedback because there were big big jumps with the non-resident. We went up $30 on the permit, and then we went up on the camper fees as well. So, I'd rather wait a year and then look at doing, another increase rather than nickel and dime them every year.
The-
Yes, I agree. No, we got feedback, but honestly, rightfully so. That was a big increase, especially the camper fees on top of the non-resident fees. I will tell you that sticker sales have been robust. Once they got over the initial shock of the prices, what they felt was a lot, we've done very, very well this year, as proven in the big weekends, where even 4.5 miles seems like a small amount of beach because you got so many folks out there. So, well received.
It's still a good bargain for
Yeah.
the price for what you're getting, and we came up to the last fee increase. We were way below a lot of the other beaches, and we're now
Still are, but we're the
more
only beach
competitive.
open. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's convincing folks, or showing that we are the only beach that has been open. They know the value there, and of course, every time you raise rates, every time you go to the gas station, you're not happy about it, but you're going to do it, right? So there we go.
I think it's the other thing that kind of comes to mind, given what Mark said, is as this project gets refined, one of the things that we will need to do is to look at the impact on fees of the project costs, and that's probably an unknown at this point. So it makes sense as we go through the project, we'll refine that view, and then as we get into next year, we'll have a clear idea what we need to do possibly to actually cover things. And so I think for all the reasons I support what Nina wants to do there. I think
That is another good point. You can't just keep raising. We have to have a plan.
Yeah.
And I think the
we
timing
will
isn't
next
right
year.
yet.
Any other comments on that before we, Pete?
Yeah, so I think, Donna, you already answered it, but the original fear that raising our prices would lower the number of people using our beach and so therefore diminish our total intake of funds did not prove to be a concern.
No, it was a little lip service to staff, and
Okay.
like I said,
We got a great deal going.
We got
still.
a great deal going, and people, the use of the beach, as Maureen can testify, as a camper out there, has been really robust this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we have not had a lot of complaints. So I think the fees were it was well-founded.
Yeah,
that-
thank you.
And I think the key is we're not speculating. We have data, right? The data shows we're well under the rates charged by other beaches, number one. Number two, we're the most convenient beach. Number three, there's more things you can do on our beach than anywhere else. And also just the fact that, the usership has been continuously increasing, as we saw the numbers, particularly from out-of-towners, exponentially over the last, 12, 15 years. So, all of that kind of gives you a feeling that the elasticity of the pricing is pretty strong, pretty high. So you can, you probably wouldn't do damage by moving that price up over time. But, I think to Nina's point, you have to do it in a sensible way.
And you have to be able to justify it.
Yeah, but the only way you can do that is by data, by having data. So.
And the other thing that it's a better value, and that over the, what was it, 4 years ago, we had the task force, and we met with the police and the fire departments, and kind of, because we were having a lot of behavior issues.
Yep.
And I don't think we're seeing those because we have a police presence
Absolutely.
on a more regular basis, and just having that pickup truck that's painted different than than the other vehicles is an incentive, that it's just moving up and down the beach, and oh, that is a police cruiser. So, I think there was a fear at one point to increase the number of users, and we'd have more alcohol problems and behavior problems and dog problems. But, I think we've got a good balance and a good working relationship with the police that we're not, as we're increasing slightly the numbers, we're not seeing the behavior issues that might otherwise come along with that.
Point. I mean, it has to all be in balance, and I think we want this to be a family environment, so that's important to keep in our minds as we go through this. Did you have a question?
I just wanted to make a comment on your comment, and thank you for the praise for the police department, the men and women that go out there. They try to do the best that they possibly can do, and I think part of it over the last couple of years, and I think you can probably attest to this, the vibe out there has been a little different. But I just want to make it clear, the biggest thing that you have is that Nina and Donna and Hannah have an incredible staff. And the fact that they are out there on a regular basis, that's what's keeping the beach under control. That's what's keeping the beach running smoothly. We're out there for a few hours every weekend at best. So I think the presence of marked vehicles out there definitely is a deterrent. That's huge. The fact that every once in a while you will see a police officer up and down on a side-by-side or an ATV or even in the pickup truck, the presence is definitely noticed by those on the beach. But the systems put in place by your staff is what's making this run smoothly.
I remember a somewhat funny moment a few meetings ago where I asked Nina, because they were having all these issues in Dennis, and I said, geez, could this happen at Sandy Neck? And I just got this look, it will not happen at Sandy Neck. And that was it. That was the end of our discussion. But no, a lot of the credit goes to you guys, really, for... Okay.
So just to follow up then, so sounds like the status quo is fine. We still have to vote on it, so we still should get the whole list of what the fees are going to be so that we review it.
But generally vote on off years?
Yeah, there's nothing to vote on.
We haven't even voted on it in the past?
On off years,
we did every year.
Every other year, we
Okay.
don't increase, and we've never historically had a vote for
Okay.
a non-increase.
If we're not changing them, there's nothing to vote on.
Okay.
Okay, public comment. Our faithful public. Anybody have anything to say? No? Got to speak. That's pretty amazing. Okay, so I guess we'll end. Thank you guys very much for your support. It's great to have a full board now with Renee here. Obviously, we lose Ann, which is a shame, but hopefully we'll get that filled in less than a year. And any of you out there that are interested in being on the Sandy Neck board, even after what you heard tonight, please get in touch with the town, Cindy Lovell, I guess. Can I get a motion to?
So moved, dismissed.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.